Hi, this is Stacia, and I wanted to share a game that I played at the Parma Chess Club on Tuesday. It was April 24th, 2018, and this was against Mark DelSignor. New player, never saw him before, and he was sporting a rather low provisional rating of 1384. But we were in the 1700 quad, and he was doing just fine against the 1700 players. So I had a feeling he was a bit underrated. And sure enough, after the game, he let me know that, like, online, his rating is like 1730 or something like that. So, a stronger player than myself, and I was sporting a rating of 1591 at this time. And okay, this is my third game of the night, and so far I had a win and a draw. I played the move d4. He played d5. c4. e6. This is Queen's Gambit declined. I like knight f3 against this. He played knight f6 and now g3. And this is the Catalan. He went with bishop b4 check here. I like bishop d2 against this. And a lot of times they retreat to e7 here, which I think is the most testing way, kind of saying like that your bishop is misplaced. But Mark decided to capture, so I developed my knight that way. And I'll pull the book open. I'm pretty sure black is supposed to castle here. Yes. So the main move is castle, played 100% of the time. But Mark chose b6. So this is our first move out of book, although I'm sure this has been played before. I need to get my engine on as well. Okay, and the computer suggests a really interesting move in this position. A lot of times I consider capturing this pawn here because if I do take and he captures with the e-pawn, this does open up the bishop, but you're kind of saying, well, why'd you play b6? Because if the bishop's not going here, this is sort of a weird move. Computer suggests queen a4 check, which I also think is interesting. Similar idea. You're trying to get black to play c6 or maybe put their bishop here where, again, b6 is kind of a silly move. But I don't know. I think this is okay. And the computer's saying if they play this, you play queen c6. Kind of interesting. Now the bishop, you're stopping the bishop from going to b7. But black still has bishop a6 here. And the line it gives is kind of crazy. e4. I don't like giving up my light square bishop, so I don't think I would go this way. Although apparently this is totally fine. But honestly, I think that a trade of light square bishops benefits black. So okay, after b6, I decided to simply continue my development. So bishop g2, this is totally fine. He castled, I castled, and now black has options here. I mean, I would say bishop b7 is logical. Knight bd7, continuing development. But my opponent played a rather aggressive move, c5. Pretty interesting. So he's just thrusting in the center right away. It's not a bad move at all. I thought it was probably a little dubious because he's not really well developed, but the computer likes this move quite a bit. So this is the first moment where I actually took time to think, and I decided to capture here with the idea that after e takes d5, he can't really take with the knight because then I'll give him an isolated pawn, so pretty much this is forced. And then I can take this way, and now I've given him the hanging pawns. So this is my idea, although I regretted it shortly after because I realized that I knew that this is probably a little good for me, slightly, but I don't really know how to play against the hanging pawn, so maybe not the best choice. Then again, I really enjoy learning, so I really am glad that I went this way in hindsight, because now this is going to be my focus at my next session with my coach. I always think it's smart to play new things that you don't know much about if you're trying to improve as a player. When I've done this in the past, it's always benefited me because, like, for example, I'm going to learn how to play against the hanging pawns now, which I had no knowledge of prior to this game. All right, so I figured I should attack these, so I played rook c1, natural enough. Now what's interesting about this is the computer thinks this move is inaccurate. The problem is I'd like to gang up on this pawn and force it to advance, and then stick my knight here, blockading on the d4 square. That's what I'd really like. But I'm not going to be able to attack it enough times. So, for example, well, this is what he played in the game. Knight b to d7 defends and develops his piece. It's a little awkward because the queen's no longer defending the d pawn, but this is totally fine for black. I played knight b3, attacking it again. But the thing is, maybe my knight would rather be on the c3 square in this variation. So it's possible that maybe a maneuver like knight b1 to knight c3 is better later on, attacking the d pawn. But okay, I'm attacking this again. This presents a problem to black. He played queen e7, so defending the pawn, and now he is putting pressure on my e pawn. I played queen c2, so I added a third attacker, but I'm maintaining defense of my e pawn. And now bishop a6. So this I didn't see, but I should have. This is a good move, I thought, because it prepares rook c8. And black, I don't think, really has too much trouble. He's fully developed, and really the only advantage I have, I think, is that black has these hanging pawns, which sometimes can be an advantage. So I believe that in this type of position, black wants to play dynamically and attack, and white wants to trade down and get to an endgame where the hanging pawns are weak, or possibly force black to advance one and blockade. And if we can ever take down the center control, I think white would be better, and certainly better in an endgame. So that's kind of what I was thinking during the game. And okay, he played rook f to e1 in this position. Oh wait, I'm sorry, bishop a6. I played rook f to e1. Okay, so yeah, I thought this is kind of forced. Again, the computer gives an interesting line. It says you can take on c5. So the idea being that, and this is still going to result in a roughly equal position, but this looks really scary to me because now you're going to allow this pin. And I mean, the computer's okay with taking the bishop, playing this way. And all right, I mean, we're getting active. We've got a rook and a bishop for the queen, as well as the pawn. So I could see how this could be good. I don't know if I would have gone for a line like this. It still just looks a little bit difficult. Like here we're pinned again, but we have oh, we can actually take the pawn here, can't we? Yeah, so all right, so I guess there's play here. We're going to take the queen with check if he doesn't move, so actually that's probably the best move. This looks hard to deal with. Okay, well, anyways, let's go back to the game. Rook f to e1. He played rook a to c8. Or I thought he did. Oh, rook a to c8. Not sure if I'm totally awake right now. All right, e3. So, I mean, e3 is going to help stop the advance of the pawn, although black would like to trade this off, maybe, as long as he doesn't get stuck with an isolated pawn. So maybe he doesn't want to. Yeah, so I have a lot to learn about hanging pawns. Okay, and I went rook f to d8. Oh, I keep getting mixed up. Rook f to d8. Okay, he goes here. And now I play the move bishop h3. So I liked this because it looks kind of annoying. It pins his knight to his rook. So he kind of has to deal with that. Rook c7 was played. And I thought maybe he's going to double on the c file. But again, this pawn advance is very welcome to me. I'll just sink my knight right into d4. And that would be a nice blockading square with my knight more centralized and improved. And here, I'm not sure I like this move. I played rook c to d1. So I was kind of thinking that I'm not able to attack this pawn enough times, but I think this kind of frees up black a little bit. And, okay, he brought his bishop back. So noticing that I'm attacking the d pawn now. And here I play bishop g2. Looks funny to move my bishop back, but this is a key defender of my king, and I didn't like my knight hanging here with the bishop bearing down. So I thought this pawn advance is suddenly a threat. Maybe it was better to move the knight away. Like maybe, I think I can consider stuff like knight to h3. Computer doesn't love it, but this seems a little bit logical to me. It says he can play c4. Not d4, c4. Yeah, I always have to watch this, so I mean, my idea is this. Computer thinks black is slightly better here. My knight is on the rim, although I'd be looking at coming into here. And if he ever plays g6, I think I would just go back and argue that he has a weakness. So pretty interesting position, but I played bishop g2, and now my opponent found an interesting move. Queen e4. So I did not want to trade queens here because I thought that brought his knight into e4 where it would be a good piece. But in hindsight, maybe trading queens is the best way to go. Idea being that I want to go to an endgame where these pawns are weak. And if he does take with a pawn, which is probably the best way to go, now he has an isolated c pawn. And I can actually play knight e5 here because of the pin. So if he did take, white wins the game with rook takes d8 check. Yeah, but I didn't like this continuation. But probably white is just fine here, and in hindsight, I think this was a better way to go. Instead, I played the move queen e2, so refusing to trade queens. And I was kind of eyeing up this square here. And here he played queen a4. So I thought this was a good move. The thing about this is he's attacking my a pawn. I can't advance it or I'll just drop my knight. And he's also threatening bishop a6 soon. Like, bishop a6 is a tempo move on my queen. I do have the d2 square. But how to defend the a-pawn? Pretty much, I decided to play knight c1. Looks a little passive. This does defend. And now knight e4 comes. So black is better here, in my opinion. Computer says it's equal, but he's more active. He needs to connect his rooks, but I think I like black's position here. All right, so I have b3. And the queen drops back. And now I think bishop a6 is a threat because the queen is now covering that d2 square. Although I did open up b2. So here I play queen b2 though. Just avoid the tempo move. I don't think my queen is horrible on this square. Has a lot of scope down this diagonal, aimed right at the king. And now he played knight d to f6. Okay, so this improves his knight, opens up the rook to defend the d-pawn, and sort of solidifies this knight a bit. If I ever take, he can drop the other knight into e4. And I thought I better start playing active or I'm going to get in trouble. So I played knight e5. I wanted to open up my bishop. I don't know that taking this is good, but at least it's a possibility. And I was also eyeing up a knight c4 move. Because notice that this rook would be hanging. Okay, so I saw that black could jump in, and he sure does. Knight c3, very interesting move. This hits my rook. And yeah, I don't necessarily like having a queen and a knight in my position. So he's also hitting here again. But I can just play rook d2, just move the rook. This helps to defend the a-pawn as well. If he does drop back, it'll hit the rook again. And here he played rook e7, so attacking my knight on e5. But this allowed me to play a move I wanted to play anyway, knight c4. So tempo move on the queen. And taking is actually playable. Very interesting position. In fact, I think it's his only move. It's kind of sad that he can play this because if not, he was going to be in trouble. Yeah, like if he just moves his queen, I'm going to capture his knight. So his queen must defend the knight. And if queen here, I have knight to d3, attacking. So pretty much he has to take, and this gets really interesting. So d takes e4. Rook takes d8 check. Lucky for him, the queen was defending this. Maybe not lucky. He probably saw that. All right, so queen captures. I can take this pesky knight. So I actually thought this was helpful for me. He does get the trade-off. Light square bishops. Yeah, and I don't necessarily want my king on this diagonal where he's vulnerable to checks. He checked me right away. And I played king g1. Now this is interesting because king g1 seems natural to me. I don't want to allow the queen into my position here, and pushing can create weaknesses. But the computer actually says that f3 is the only move that keeps an advantage. I was worried about something like knight g5, but actually after e4, black's just in trouble. Of course, this late in the game, this is rapid time control, so G30 with 5-second delay. And I didn't have much time on my clock at this point. In fact, I want to say that, yeah, I had less than 3 minutes, and my opponent had less than 1 minute. Okay, so King G1. He decided to capture here, which I'm not sure if it was good, because if he doesn't capture, I'm not sure how my knight gets in the game. I suppose I could go here, but it takes time. So I get to recapture and improve my knight at the same time. And yeah, this is kind of where I stop notating. So position seems equal at this point. He does have an isolated pawn, but he's also more active and has the initiative. The knight can come into G4 or E4, and this rook can double. And this results in a very interesting endgame. Now, I tried to reconstruct the game, and I wasn't able to, but I am going to show the position, because I took a photo of it after the game. So bear with me here, and I'm going to set it up. We had a very interesting position. Rook versus 2 pawns on the 6th rank. I have never seen this particular endgame, although I knew it was tricky and that I might be able to hold. Okay, so we had this position, and it's black to move. I basically had to sacrifice my rook for a queen, and then he recaptured. And then I played my king up to here. So, all right. So I have a question for you. If you'd like to pause your video, is black winning here? And if so, what does black need to do to win this endgame? Okay, and what's interesting here is black actually is winning. We weren't sure about this, and we had a couple master players look at it after, and they did, after a few minutes, like more than 5 minutes, figure out how black can win. But it's not something that I think is easy to find in time trouble. So, okay, black checks here, and this is fine. And I brought my king up. So king G7. Obviously, I want to queen this pawn if I can, so my idea is to put my king to the side and see if I can just threaten to queen. And he brought his king up. I played king G7, so I'm threatening to push this guy. He checked me. Now I play king G8. So again, I want to play G7. Here black can take the pawn. And this is actually a mistake. And now the game is a draw, interestingly enough. So okay, I'm going to play G7. And my pawn's on the 7th rank. Now if black had a queen, this is still a little bit of a tricky endgame, where if my pawn was a rook pawn, I believe it's a draw. And if my pawn was a knight pawn, it's a draw. But a bishop pawn would be a win if black had a queen. But with a rook, this is just a draw. It's nothing to do here. So let's say the black rook comes here. I'm going to threaten to queen. And yeah, I don't know what black can really do. Okay, but the thing is, after king G8, black doesn't have to capture this pawn. Black can actually bring the king up. And the idea is to win this pawn here. So white is sort of in zigzagging here, because if I push the pawn, he has rook G1. And now he's going to take this with check. So that's not going to work for me. If I play e7, now he can take this, because after g7, again, rook g1 is a good move. I think other things win as well. And he's going to be able to collect this. Yep, just like that. And the only other moves I have are to move the king. The h file is off limits. The king has kind of walled me off, so the only move I have is f8. And now this is checkmate. So yeah, so counterintuitive, I guess, but you know, with no time on the clock, it would be hard to see that you can't take the pawn, I think. But yeah, this move just wins the game. Furthermore, I mean, you can play other moves as well. So rook g1 still wins as well. And again, it seems like white's just in zigzag here. Like king h7. Now this pawn can be taken, because if I play g7, the king comes in. So really the only mistake is if black takes the pawn. And this did happen in the game, and after here, he played here, and this is stalemate. So he had like 10 seconds left. I don't think he knew what to do. So he just stalemated, and it was a draw. So I was really happy to secure 2 draws and a win in the 1700 quad. That's a really good result for me. My rating will go back over 1600 USCF, which I only recently was able to accomplish after 9 months of effort. So I'm happy to have some progress and really enjoying learning the game. So thanks for watching, and have a great day.